As a thriving Broadway actress, my guest today gave up the lights of New York City to be a homeschool mom in a small city. We'll talk about it today on The Bravehearted Woman. Hey everybody, this is Dawn Damon and this is my show, The Bravehearted Woman. Thanks for stopping by. Hey, each week I bring important topics for women just like you to help you live with courage and confidence and bold vision for your future. So make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm always giving out free resources that empower you. So you ready? Come on, let's get brave. Hey everyone, my guest today is an actress, a best-selling author, blogger, and 1/3 of the popular Mom to Mom podcast. She writes books helping women find purpose, and she also partners with God to help children find their purpose. We're going to have a great conversation. Welcome my guest today, Kate Battistelli. Hi, Kate.
Oh, hey, Dawn. Thank you for having me today.
You're so welcome. I'm so glad that you're joining us. It's a treat for us to have you here today. And I wanted to start with a question that I think you probably get a lot. I did not know that you were such an incredible actress and that you enjoyed for a season, you and your husband, the
Yeah.
lights of Broadway in New York. What an incredible experience was that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, that was an amazing experience. I was a young actress in New York in my 20s, and I went out to audition for the understudy for this big national tour, Broadway national tour of The King and I, starring Yul Brynner, if you remember who he was.
I do remember.
Yeah, some of your younger listeners may not know, but he was Pharaoh in the Ten Commandments. So that's a good way to remember him. But yeah, he was a huge star back in 81. And I thought, well, this will be fun. I can go out as the understudy, and I'll see the country, I'll make money, it'll be great. But I'll never get to go on because it's very rare that an understudy goes on, especially at that level. So I thought, okay, great. I went out, in the chorus doing my thing. About 2 months into the run of the show, as I come into the theater, because remember, there were no cell phones yet. This is 1981. There weren't even computers. So you can't get a hold of someone during the day, right? I mean, they're gone, they're gone. Well, I'd been gone all day, came in at 7:15 for an 8 o'clock show. And as the producer saw my foot cross the threshold of the stage door, he ran to me, grabbed me, and said, "She's sick, you're on." And I mean, I'd rehearsed. I knew my part. I knew what to do, but I'd never worn the costumes, never handled the props, never done a scene with this mega star. And I thought, well, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And
Wow.
I learned in that moment. And I taught my daughter this many times. I said, sometimes you just have to do it afraid.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's no option to back out. This is what I was being paid for. But I went out, I did it, I didn't die. I ended up doing it for 2 weeks because the leading lady had pneumonia. She was out and she came back to
Oh,
the tour. I went back to the chorus, but it doesn't end there. This is the crazy part.
oh
About a
my
month
goodness.
later, I get a call from one of the producers. He says, Mr. Brenner has sent the leading lady back to New York. He's paid off her 2-year contract and he wants you in the role. I got to tell you, that never happens. Never. I mean, they're not going to bring in somebody, they're not going to have somebody like me. I mean, I was a young actress. I was good. I could sing all that stuff, but I wasn't a seasoned Broadway actress, which they'd always bring in. But he really liked me for some reason. I ended up doing the
Wow.
show almost 3 years, about 1,000 performances, about 25% of all the performances he ever did of The King and I. And I mean, just stuff like that blows my mind.
Just commenting, that is just so incredible. And we, here at the Bravehearted Woman, we like to applaud women who do brave things. That certainly was brave. Keep telling the story. So you guys just must have had some chemistry that he wasn't feeling so much with the first girl.
Yeah, I think, plus I was quite a bit younger. She was probably 40s, 50s. I was in my 20s. So I think actually historically I was the right age for Mrs.
Right.
Anna to go to Siam and teach the King's Children and all that. I just think I brought a youthfulness that he liked. Something, I don't know, there's something about me. I know for me that was probably, if there's a perfect part in musical theater, that was the one for me. There's lots of great roles, but that just suited me so well. But the best part, my husband joined the tour as the associate conductor. I didn't know him, but we met and fell in love across the footlights, truly. Because I could
Oh.
see him in the orchestra pit and he was super cute. I thought, okay, I gotta find out about that guy. What's the scoop on him? So we met, we got married. I'll tell you the story if you want to know about how we got saved, because I didn't know the Lord yet.
Well, I do want to know, and that's what I
Yeah.
was going to ask you. Was this
Yeah.
God's favor on your life? But you
No.
weren't even a Christian at that time.
Mm-mm.
So you weren't walking under that umbrella.
No, I see it today. It was like a prophetic picture of how God will reach down and he will pull you out. He'll pull you out of
Yes.
obscurity into his purpose. So anyway, he joined the tour. I left after almost 3 years. We got married and we had a little side business, still living in New York, pursuing fame and fortune. I wanted to win a Tony, be a star. You want all the things.
Of course.
Why else are you there? But we had a little side business, and there was a gal that was mentoring us, an older gal, and we found out she was a born again Jewish woman, a
Oh,
messianic Jew.
yes.
She kept inviting us to church, and she was pretty relentless, and we just were, we had no interest. The desire to have Jesus or any of that was not even on our radar, but she kept inviting us. She really was relentless, and I always tell people, don't stop inviting, because eventually, like what happened with us, you get embarrassed to say no one more time. It's like, let's just get this over with, and then she'll stop bugging us. On a Friday night, she said, come this Friday, we've got this great gospel choir. You're going to love the music. And we thought, all right, let's just go, and she won't bug us anymore. So we get on the F train all the way to Jamaica, Queens. If you know New York, it's probably not where people go when they're coming to, to visit, to be a
Sure.
tourist. You don't go to Jamaica. But anyway, we take this long subway ride. We come up out of the subway. It's about 2 weeks, about 2 blocks from the church, which is in a big old theater. Well, as we're walking, you can almost sense the building like pulsating with the music and the Holy Spirit. I know now that's what it was, but and we're already starting to have a little trepidation. It's like, where is she taking us? Well,
Right.
we
What did we
walk.
say yes to?
I mean, when you haven't experienced the Holy Spirit, it's kind of scary. You don't know what's going on. So we walk in this church. It's an all black holiness church. And if for those listeners that don't know what that is, it's very strict. Women wear dresses or skirts, no makeup, no jewelry. They sit on one side of the church, the men are on the other side. So that alone was enough for me to just go, what planet did they just drop me on? I was
Of
raised going to the
course.
Episcopal Church, but there was never that call for a relationship with Jesus. It was nice and pretty and liturgical, but I never felt like I had this need to know God.
Mhm.
But the other cool thing about this church, you walk in and there's crutches hanging on the wall from people that have been healed and empty wheelchairs. And we're just thinking, what kind of place is this? We've never experienced anything like this. Well, she takes us down to the front row. She and Mike and I are the only three white faces in an all black church. Big
Mhm.
church. This is an old big old theater. She sits us down and the pastor gives this pretty fiery sermon. I'm sure she said, you need to get those young people saved. So, but Mike's on one side, I'm on the other. She gives the altar call. Our hands go up. We both receive the Lord. I didn't know he was responding. He didn't know I was, but we both went down front,
Oh my
gave our
goodness.
hearts to the Lord March 31st, 1984, and really never looked back from that. We've never fallen off our faith. We've had our doubts, and those struggles, but we've always stuck to it. But so we gave our hearts to the Lord, but then we were still, living in New York, loving that life, pursuing fame and fortune. He's conducting on Broadway, Radio City, all that stuff. And we eventually had our daughter a year later. And then after that, we're still living in New York. The weirdest thing, we started both individually getting this sense that something wasn't right with the careers we were in. And as
Mm.
we talked about it and prayed about it, we knew the Lord was asking us to lay that down. He was
Wow.
saying, that is not the life that I've chosen for you. And we're doing well. You don't lay something down you've been working years to produce in yourself.
Right.
My husband has a doctorate in music. You just don't do that. But
Right.
God was pretty clear. We thought, all right, I guess we're walking away from this. And all our friends thought we were crazy, which
Of
it
course.
sounds like that, but we knew God was asking us to do something really hard in obedience to what he was calling us to. It makes
Yes.
sense today, but at the time it made no sense.
Well, yeah, and
But
let's talk about that just for a moment because there's many people who might be confused about why is God calling me away from something that He's
mhm,
gifted me to do or that He's given me
yeah.
favor and yet and still you even as young believers, I mean,
hmm
you were 5, 6, 7 years old in the Lord maybe at that time,
Yeah,
but
not even.
not
Yeah, about
even
2 years. Yeah.
2 years old in the Lord, but you
Yeah.
had the discernment to know the
Yeah.
voice of the Father saying,
Yeah.
lay this down.
Yeah, it was difficult. It makes me think of Abraham. You know how God said, Abraham, leave behind everything you know, your family, your friends, your land, everything. Go to a land that I'll show you, but I'm not going to tell you. You just
Right.
obey. And Abraham didn't know why. He had no clue he was about to change the world. You know, I
Yes.
mean, if he hadn't done what he did, we probably wouldn't be here or be
Right.
sitting here. But because of his obedience, and a lot of times we're not going to know. A lot of times it's going to be years will give perspective. But what I see now, God honors obedience, not always right at that moment. But
Mhm.
what I see now, what God did with our daughter, with her career in Christian music, all that stuff, I see that it's like our ceiling became her floor. That
Yeah.
what we'd learned, what we learned about the Lord, what we knew about just the entertainment world, not Christian music, but just in general. I can see it just makes total sense today, but at the time it didn't.
It
We only
didn't.
have one daughter, so she's our only, well, one child. She's our only, but so we have the ability to really pour into her as we saw what God was beginning to do with her.
Well, we
So,
may have
yeah.
some listeners that are not completely familiar with who your daughter is, but before you unpack that, let's go back just for a moment because when you found out that you were pregnant and your husband was still working and Radio City and conducting and all of that, then you started to feel God saying, lay it down. Where did you go and what did you do?
Well, after she was about a year old, we're both from New Jersey, so we moved back because that's what we were familiar with. Had a home business. I started homeschooling back in the 80s, way before it was a cool thing to do. And
Yes.
now, thank God, people have caught on because, we need as many homeschoolers as we can get. But was doing that, just trying to figure out being life as a mom. Eventually, we moved down to Florida where she was raised. We were there 20 years. Now we're in Franklin, Tennessee, because she's
Okay.
here with 7 grandkids, which blows my mind that she has 7 kids, but it's amazing.
Wow.
But yeah, there's just those times God's going to say obey and he will not tell you why. And
Mhm.
that's okay. If you know it's him, if you don't know, I mean, get confirmation. Get some people to pray for you. Get some mature believers to pray with you to make sure that you're doing what he says you're doing. I call it a God dare. That was my second book. It's like
Yes.
God will dare you to do something crazy way outside your comfort zone. Sometimes you'll get what it is, and sometimes it's just God that I don't know. I think you're saying this. Like with us, our first leaving New York, we were pretty certain that's what he was saying. And we got our friend June, who brought us to the Lord, her and her church, to pray for us. Because you don't want to make a huge blunder like that,
No, you
but it
don't.
makes total sense today.
Yeah, we can look back and we can connect the dots and say, boy, I see
Yeah.
God's hand here and here and here,
Yeah.
and he was definitely directing me. So you
Yeah.
had your daughter. Your daughter is Francesca Battistelli, and she's an amazing singer, worship
She
leader,
is.
and has taken the world by storm. Now she's been around, she's had a long career in music, and praise
Yeah.
God for that. I'm going to ask you this, and then we can shift gears a little bit because I want to ask about your career, your ministry today. But where did the beautiful name Francesca come from?
Well, it's interesting. It took us a few days in the hospital. We did not have a name for her. I kept thinking Jenny or all these cute names. It was like it just doesn't go with Battistelli. So I
Yeah.
asked my husband, I said, your dad's name is Frank. What's the Italian of Frank? It's Francesco. And I thought, oh, it's like ding, that just went off in my, I thought, Francesca, that's beautiful. But it was so long, Francesca Battistelli, we never gave her a middle name, which she still mocks at us about. But the cool thing about her name, one day I thought to myself, well, what does her name mean? Well, I looked up, Battistelli is Battistelli, hit the stars. That's what Battistelli means, which is cool. And I thought, what does Francesca mean? It means free. So I thought, okay, she was around 10 years old. And I thought, all right, Lord, free to hit the stars. What does that mean? But
Mhm.
sometimes our names carry some great meaning. So look up your name.
Yes.
Sometimes if it's Smith, it's probably not going to have a name. I mean, it might, but won't typically have a deeper meaning. But this, and I mean, that's just what I thought. It's not necessarily God saying that, but I thought, well, that's pretty cool, Lord.
That's a very cool, and that was the perfect name for her.
I think
So
so.
now today, fast forward a little bit, you have a ministry, you have written, is it 3 books
Three
now?
books, yeah.
And your latest book is called After the Party of the Empty Nest, Mom is Not Your Only Name. That's an amazing title. What's the After the Party all about?
It's the after party. So
After
it's, you
party.
know how like you're doing a show or a movie or whatever, it ends and you have a big after party. Or there's, maybe the opening of the show and there's that after party, everybody's excited and thanking and, all that stuff. And it's a great time. Well, I look at the empty nest. It was really hard for me when she left finally at 20 years old. And I was just, with an only child that you're pouring everything into because, just getting your career going and figuring out Nashville and all that crazy stuff. We were with her all the time. And all of a sudden, we weren't. All of a sudden, the house is empty. There's, I don't have much to do because she's not around. It was really
Right.
hard. That
Right.
empty nest time hit me because I'd never planned for it. So that's one of the big themes in the book is start now for then, because you're going to get there and it's going to be hard, but you can get through it if you've got a plan.
The empty nest, because so many
Mm,
women think that mom is their only title.
yeah.
That's their role, and it is a beautiful and primary role for us.
Mhm.
Once we've had our children, that's what we wanna do,
Yeah.
but it's not the only thing God's put
No.
inside of us to do, right?
It ends that season. It's a season of life, but that's not the only season. I mean, figure you probably have another 40 years of this life. So you can't sit around just moaning that your kids are gone. That was super important, but you're still mom, but your role has changed. Mom is
Yes.
not your only name. When you figure out what that next thing is, it's exciting. It's like an after party. I mean, people look at that going, after party, how can that be? But it really is if you're doing that other purpose God has for you. I like to say your mom and. What's your and? I mean, I'm mom and I'm an author, which I never saw coming. That was never in my playbook to write books. But now, it's something God has called me to. So what's that thing God's calling you to? What is that new adventure? What is that God dare? What is he dare? He totally dared me to write my first book and it made no sense. But,
Yeah,
but
tell
I
us about
obeyed.
that.
Yeah, well, I mean, our daughter Franny, Francesca, she had gone off to Nashville. She was starting to get songs on the radio. People were starting to know who she was. So she was starting to get famous,
Yeah.
whatever that means. So we homeschooled her down in Florida, and we were under this big umbrella group, homeschool group. And the lady who ran it, she calls me one night and she says, Kate, we want you and Mike to come. We're having our big 20th anniversary. Will you come and speak to our parents? Tell them, what did you do to raise your daughter to not only find her purpose and her destiny, but also to continue having a passion for the Lord? Because so many kids leave home and they walk away from the faith.
Right.
So she said, would you, Mike, please come and speak to the parents? I said, oh, sure, we'd love to come. And I hung up the phone. I looked at Mike and I said, what the heck did we do? Because, you're raising your child according to biblical principles, but there's no real manual other than the Bible. And so we sat down, though, and we came up with 15 things. And I thought, okay, well, that's pretty good. We didn't do too badly. And a couple of weeks later, we give our talk. The parents seemed to love it. Came home the next day, and I'm just thanking the Lord that it went well. And as soon as I thanked him for those 15 things, I heard the Lord speak in my spirit, and he said, those are book chapters. And I just thought,
Mm.
um, no, I don't want to write a book. I don't know how to write a book. No one will read it. No one will publish it. I didn't graduate college, though I did go to 4 colleges in 2 years. Didn't
Oh,
graduate from any of them, but I wanted to be in theater. College
yeah.
for me, it just wasn't filling the need that I had. But I gave him every excuse that I can't do this and I don't want to, but it just kept rolling around in my spirit. I thought, okay, what do I do with this? Well, I found a friend who is a writing coach, which I didn't even know was a thing, but I thought, well, she
Sure.
knows more about it than I do. So I called her and I said, Diane, I got to show you this. And I feel like the Lord's telling me a book. What is this? And I show her and she goes, yep, this is a book. I'm going to get you started. You're going to write it and we're going to get it published.
Oh,
And
yeah.
all that happened. This is back in 2011. I guess it came out in 2012. None of it made sense. I had no literary agent. I had no following. Like nothing about it made sense, but God did it. And that's what I call a God dare because I stepped out and did that crazy thing that I didn't even know how to do. But God does that all through our lives if we're willing to listen. But like I say in the book, you have to choose to be chosen to change the world. We
Hmm.
can say no to the Lord. He can ask us to do something and we can say, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm too afraid. I messed up too much. I am not worth it. I mean, all those stupid lies that we tell ourselves as to
Yes.
why we won't do something that we know the Lord is telling us. But it's a lie from the pit of hell. The enemy does not want you to fulfill your purpose. You
Right.
know,
That's so
he didn't
true.
want me writing books. He doesn't want you podcasting because you're getting his name out there. So he will do everything he can to stop us, make us afraid, make us feel we're not worthy or we're not good enough, all that nonsense. And we just have to be bold and step out, do what he tells us to do. Be careful, know that it's the Lord. Like I said before, get
Yes.
confirmation. But if you know it is, jump in. There's a story about, I don't know if you've ever heard of Reinhard Bonnke.
I have.
Okay, so he was a huge evangelist in Africa, like the Billy Graham of Africa. Millions
Yes.
came into the kingdom through his ministry. Well, at one point, at the height of his ministry, the Lord said to him, "You were not my first choice. You were my third choice." I mean, can you imagine hearing that? How humbling it would be? But all I can think about is those two other guys.
Right.
I'm assuming men, they get to heaven and God says, "Look what I had for you. You said
Hmm.
no." You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And I'm sure it was hard. There was suffering. I'm sure Reinhard Bonnke went through a lot. And maybe these men saw that and just didn't want to pay the price because there's a
Maybe.
price to
Hmm.
following God. I don't
Yeah.
know what it is, but that scares me to say no. I think, I didn't meet the Lord till I was 29. So I
Mm-hmm.
already missed a lot of what he probably had planned for me. I'm determined not to miss anything else. I'm like, Lord, I'm going to go where you tell me to go. I'm going to do what you tell me to do. I mean, I'm saying that today. If I don't do it, you can come back to me and say, "Kate, you were supposed to do this." But you know what I mean? It's like, it's
Yeah.
scary to say no to the Lord because
Well,
you're going to
well,
miss.
yes. That's a very sobering thought, and it is scary to say no to the Lord. And God is so gracious and He's so good because He gives us those holy nudges, as you even
Yeah.
say, that He begins to stir in our spirit, and it's kind of the voice that won't be silent. It just keeps coming
Hmm.
back. It's a relentless, echo within us,
Hmm.
and at some point, you have to say, God, are you speaking to me? And then I think all of
Hmm.
heaven rejoices and goes, Yay, she finally got it. She's, ah, you know, but, those things are so important. And I really appreciate your ministry to women. I have a similar ministry to women in my latest book, The Making of a Bravehearted Woman, for women in midlife and beyond, that there's still a brave calling. There's still a
Oh,
purpose for your
absolutely.
life. And so many
Yeah.
women, what do I do now that my children are gone? And do I really have gifts and talents that I can
Hmm.
offer? I think a lot of them are dormant, that maybe they haven't been
Yes.
cultivated yet. And, cheers to you who took that dare and allowed a gift to be cultivated. I'm sure the first book was very difficult to write. The second one, a little bit easier. The third one, you're going, okay, I get this now.
Yeah, I can do this
I
now.
can do this now. So
Yeah.
tell us about your latest book in terms of where do we find that? And are you speaking about those things that we're talking about? It's not too late and there's more yet
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh, yeah. I'm speaking about that all the time because there's so much more. I think the moms that are listening, if you're facing the empty nest or you're in it, just know that there's more. If you're facing it, start planning now. What are those things you used to like to do? Maybe there's that thing that's been haunting you since high school that I'm supposed to do this, but I can't do it in the mothering years. Like I couldn't have been writing books back then, but I can do it now. Maybe there's that hobby you want to pick up. You always wanted to start a business. You always wanted to go into politics. You want to go back and get your degree. Those are all possible now because you have more freedom. That's the best part of the empty nest. Even if you're a working mom, you still have more time. There's more time at night. You're not dealing with homework or picking kids up or dropping them off. You have that time to spend with your husband. That's another big area is marriage.
Yes.
Super important to be pressing in now before you hit the empty nest because a lot of times women will hit that and the kids have been this buffer and they've been everything, and I don't have time for that. I got this with the kids, whatever. And they don't go out on dates. They don't press into their marriage. There's a awful phenomenon called gray divorce. And it's
Yes.
unfortunately all too common when the kids leave, the parents get divorced because there's nothing in common anymore. They
I think
forget why
I,
they fell in love.
yes, and I think I heard that if not the top statistic, but one of the top three of divorce
Mhm.
today is
Yeah.
in that population. And you're so right. That's another whole podcast, man. But you're so right that pay attention to the marriage now because you're right. Those children are a buffer. And when those kids all
Mhm.
go, it's you and him.
Yeah.
And
It's all those little things that used to bother you that have kind of been pushed down. But
mhm.
they all of a sudden come up. And I like to say, you don't plan for retirement when you're in it. You got to plan 20, 30 years before. Same with your marriage. You can't wait to fix it then. Now's the time to start spending time together, figuring out what's going on. It's hard. The empty nest is hard for a lot of reasons, but when you get past all that, that's when life can open up if you let it. You can sit there and mourn for 3 years. I'll have women tell me that's it. Oh, I can't do anything since my kids are gone. I'm like, you need to get up and get out. Go volunteer. Do something to get away from Netflix, or whatever it
Yeah.
is you're spending time with. Each of us has something to offer. And I'm telling people this all the time now because I really feel it strongly. I believe we're in the end times. I don't know how much time we have before Jesus comes back. It could be next year. It could be 10 years, 20 years. I don't know. I feel like it's closer than we think. And if you think
Yeah.
about Jesus put us on this planet during this era. We weren't born in 1850 or
Right.
1700s. We're born now. That's a huge honor when you look at how crazy the world is, when you look at how much
Yes.
need for salvation there is.
Mhm.
We've got to be doing our part to build the kingdom. And if you're just sitting around and not praying and asking the Lord, what is my part? It can be something huge. You can sell 1 million books, or it can be, hey, God saying, I want you to work with those Alzheimer's patients because there's people that need salvation. You know what I mean? It's not, God doesn't look at the size of our obedience. He just looks at our obedience. Are we doing what he's telling us to do? And one thing leads to the next. As
Mhm.
you do this one thing, then God says, take on this and take on that. And it might get harder and harder. Who knows? Because there's always a price to obedience, but
Mhm.
that's what he's looking for. So if you're just wondering, what am I supposed to do? Just start praying and really asking the Lord, what's my part in building the kingdom during these last maybe decades? I don't know.
Yeah, so well said. What is my part in the kingdom? And hey, women listening, if you are in that empty nest season, if you're in that post-menopausal season, or if you're in that place where you're about to retire and you are thinking, what are my gifts? At the very least, we can be prayer warriors. At the very
Absolutely.
least, we can be that light that shines in a very dark world. So your wisdom, Kate, is so great because we can volunteer. We can get beyond
Hmm.
ourselves and say, God, how do you want to use me?
Yeah.
And many times, just taking a step of faith in serving, in volunteering, and doing something can activate
Yep.
our next season. And we
Yeah.
say, wow, I didn't see that coming. But it was
Hmm.
just that one step of obedience that brought us into a new place, a new atmosphere, a new
Hmm.
environment where those seeds could take root and grow.
Oh, absolutely. One other thing I just want to say, moms, mentor younger moms. Be a Titus 2 woman to the younger mom coming up. If you're in your empty nest and you're dealing with it, get with a mom that's facing it and scared, because a lot of women are scared of that. So volunteer, mentor, let things start coming out of that. You're exactly right. That can sort of foster what that next thing is.
Amen. Well, it's been great to be with you. I can't believe how fast the time goes. I'm sure we can find your book on
Amazon.
Amazon,
Yeah.
and that's the best place to get it. And we would love to get a copy of that. Final last words for women listening, and oh, and the favorite song that your daughter sings.
Oh gosh, I think Defender is one of them. Probably the biggest one. There's another, I can't think of the name of it. But anyway, that one I love because that the first time I heard that, I just was pretty much on the floor, just going, oh my word, because of the words of that song. So if
The
you
word,
haven't heard it, go get Defender. That's a great song, or go listen to it. But
yes,
yeah, you can find me katebattistelli.com. I'm Kate Battistelli on all the socials, so I would
Mhm.
love to connect with you there, and
Wonderful.
yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for being on The Bravehearted Woman. You are indeed a bravehearted woman. Keep being brave. Keep taking that next step. God's got incredible things. We say all the time, if you have a pulse, you have a purpose.
I love that. Amen.
So, bravehearted women, I'm going to leave you like I always do. Wonderful to be with you again. And you can find all of my free gifts on braveheartedwoman.com/resources. And it's my time to ask you this question. Is it your time to find your brave and live your dreams?